This morning, 2 weeks in, Democrats face distractions, Republicans defending their election bills. What should we expect this week? Outspoken State Rep Gene Wu is with us from Washington. The new chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, Matt Rinaldi, his plans for the party and how he will work with Governor Abbott after originally endorsing one of Abbott's challengers. On Tuesday, Texas will send a new face to Congress. Jake Ellzey versus Susan Wright in the race for Congressional District 6. And Republicans continue to make inroads in the Rio Grande Valley. McAllen's new mayor is a conservative. Javier Villalobos tells us what he likes and dislikes about today's GOP.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to our viewers across the state. We will begin this Sunday with the top political headlines here in Texas. Don Huffines just got a big endorsement in his run for governor. U.S. Senator Rand Paul there says he will support the Dallas businessman. This is a significant bump for Huffines from a notable conservative. Huffines is running against Greg Abbott, Allen West, and Chad Prather for the Republican nomination for governor next year. On Tuesday, Texas will send a new face to Congress. Jake Ellzey and Susan Wright there are in the runoff for Congressional District 6. Both are Republicans, and this district is part of the city of Arlington and Ellis and Navarro counties in North Texas. They're running to replace the late Ron Wright, who died from COVID-19 in February. And we watched a unique bipartisan moment in the Texas Senate the other day. State senators recognized Opal Lee. She's the Fort Worth woman who worked for years and finally got Juneteenth recognized as a national holiday. Juneteenth is the day that people who were enslaved in Texas found out they were free. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said he would recommend that the state Senate have a portrait of Opal Lee made and added to the chamber. But the big political news right now remains down the hall in the House chamber at the state capitol there. We are entering week 3 for Texas House Democrats in D.C. COVID has now become a distraction there, but it appears the Democrats are successfully keeping their coalition together and are intent on running out the clock on this special legislative session to kill another Republican bill that might change how and when we vote. Our first guest is in D.C. at State Rep Gene Wu, a Houston Democrat, who spoke to us from the Washington Hotel, where he and his colleagues remain in their self-imposed exile. Representative Wu, welcome back to the program. You guys are going into your third week there in Washington, D.C., away from Austin. It's obvious that Congress says it does not have the votes to pass any type of national voting reform. What do you think this trip to D.C. has gained Texas House Democrats?
Well, look, this is the halfway point. Today is actually the halfway point of our stay here to end the session. The end of the special session. When we started here, we talked about our goals, and we had discussed this at length among ourselves. And look, we said, like, we need to change the narrative of what's happening throughout the nation. We need to bring awareness of the situation. We need to get people woken up about what is going on and how their rights are being slowly and very quietly taken away. And I think we've accomplished that.
Representative, do you expect that the Texas House Democrats will return in 2 weeks at the end of this special session before the next one is called?
You know, this stuff evolves really on a day-to-day basis. And I would say, like, why not? I mean, I want to go home. I want to go home at least and change out my clothes and change out into a new set, a new suit. I've been wearing the same suit for the last 2 weeks. So, you know, I don't see why not.
To make sure I'm clear, after this special session expires in 2 weeks, you think it's likely that the delegation will return to Austin?
I think so.
Okay. COVID has obviously become a distraction for House Democrats there in D.C. Can you describe what it's like on a daily basis? Are there daily tests? Are there no more meetings and meals together?
You know, the great thing about being a Democrat in this time of crisis is what we have gone back to is exactly where we were just a few months ago. All we're doing is we're wearing masks in indoor spaces, in crowded areas. We're having daily tests when we come in the morning. That's exactly what we did during the legislative session throughout the entirety of it.
I've seen you on social media, and a lot of people are saying, you know, as far as COVID goes, This could have all been avoided if lawmakers were wearing their masks from the get-go. Do you know how many of your colleagues have been vaccinated?
We don't. I know that 100% of Democrats are vaccinated, and we've actually checked. Same with the U.S. Congress. 100% of Democrats in the U.S. House are vaccinated as well. How many Republicans are vaccinated? I think the U.S. House, they reported that only like 80 were vaccinated. So I know the Republicans are very eager to make some jokes about this COVID situation, but be careful. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you joke about. People say like, look, this wouldn't happen if you stayed in Texas. I don't think so. Texas is actually one of the hottest spots of the growing Delta variant right now. And we have a governor who has no interest, has absolutely zero interest in doing anything that would contain it.
Democratic State Rep Philip Cortez from San Antonio, he left D.C. and returned to Austin, as you well know. He said he was instructed to begin discussions with Republicans there. Are you familiar with this? To your knowledge, was he asked to return?
Look, everybody here is free to do what they choose to do on their own. The rest of us here have agreed among ourselves, made a commitment to not only each other, but to the people of the state of Texas to protect and to do anything to protect their civil constitutional rights. What another member does or does not do, they make that choice freely on their own, and I can't speak for them.
Representative Wu, we appreciate the time and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the next plot twist in the Democrats fleeing to D.C. could happen at the state Supreme Court. Texas Tribune lays this one out pretty clearly in an article the other day. Justices are being asked to decide whether Governor Greg Abbott can legally veto salaries for the legislative branch, as he did. Remember, Abbott did that because Democrats left in May. Whatever the Texas Supreme Court, though, decides is going to have political implications. And this is one that Ross Ramsey is familiar with, a co-founder and executive editor of the Texas Tribune. Good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Jason. How are you?
Doing well here. Will the Supreme Court do Abbott a favor by upholding his veto power or by giving him an out from this stalemate?
Well, it would be a favor to give him an out either way. The court is being asked whether it's a separation of powers issue, whether the executive branch can take away the funding for the legislative branch. Sort of in the back of their minds, they've got to be thinking if he could do that, he could take away funding for the judicial branch. So there's sort of a self-interest here. The court usually doesn't like to get involved in politics. They might wait until the impasse between the Republicans and Democrats is over. But a lot of lawyers that we talked to said this is a really interesting and untested question, the kind of thing they like to see the Supreme Court rule on.
Of course, Abbott's also in the news, as you guys reported the other day at the Trib, for turning an old prison down in the valley into a detention center for migrants. But these are for people who face misdemeanor charges, which suggests to me this might be all for show.
Well, there was a U.S. Supreme Court ruling a couple of years ago that said that Arizona could not, with state officers, jail migrants, that was a matter for federal law. Abbott's taking that into account here and saying we're not going to prosecute them under federal law. We're not going to prosecute them as undocumented immigrants. We're going to prosecute them for the misdemeanors they commit here and detain them that way. In anticipation of that, they've cleared a jail, and I'm sure there's a legal challenge ahead.
Indeed so. Ross, back to you in a moment. Thank you. Coming up, what are Republicans doing right in the Rio Grande Valley, and what are Democrats doing wrong? The GOP is making inroads and just elected a conservative mayor in McAllen. Javier Villalobos will join us in a moment. And the new leader of the Republican Party of Texas, Matt Rinaldi, on his priorities for the party over the next year, and the mistake he says he thinks Speaker Phelan is making with House Democrats. You're watching Inside Texas Politics. We learned something about the timing of Texas Democrats fleeing to D.C., something State Rep James Tallarico told us there. They took off when they did because one state rep, Tallarico here, says there was a real worry that lawmakers would be locked inside the House chamber and required to vote on changes to election law. That's part of State Rep Tallarico's interview with us. He's a Democrat from Round Rock. This is an interesting conversation we had with him in D.C. for our political podcast called Yolitics. You can download it right now if your phone is handy. Turn on this camera, aim it right there at the QR code on your screen. It will take you directly to this episode. Remember, new episodes of Yolitics drop every Tuesday. We've talked a lot on this program here about how presidential races in our state are getting closer and closer. But there's one bright spot for Republicans here. That's the Rio Grande Valley, the southern tip of Texas. Over the last 3 to 4 years, Republicans have chipped away at this Democratic stronghold. And the city of McAllen just elected its first conservative mayor in decades. Javier Villalobos spoke to us from McAllen City Hall about the change his election now represents.
Mr. Mayor, welcome to our program. We appreciate you being here. Let's start with your vision. After a month or so in office, what are the biggest changes that you hope to enact there in McAllen?
Oh, certainly. And first of all, thanks for the invite. Well, there's a lot of different things we want to do. Of course, there's some that we can do immediately and some that's going to take a long time. But right off, one of the things we discussed about is real quick, the easiest things first, and revitalizing our downtown area or bicentennial area. Those are the easier things we're trying to do.
Of course, municipal races are nonpartisan, but you are well known as the former chairman of the Hidalgo County Republicans, and now you're mayor. After getting elected, I watched a Facebook video from you, and you pledged to work for everyone, regardless of political party, regardless of gender, national origin, language, etc. That's not the same messaging, though, we're hearing on a broader scale from the GOP. Do you think Republicans are making a mistake by not being more inclusive?
Well, I don't know. I can't really speak for them, but I can speak for what I did and what worked for me. And what worked for me well was, be inclusive with everybody. As for example, if you're a Republican, you're trying to gain support, you're not going to get it from other Republicans. You've got to bring in the other people, be it the independents, be it the Democrats. Look, be inclusive, talk to everybody, invite everybody. That's how you're going to be able to increase your party. There's no reason to be adversarial. And sometimes I see it on either party, the right wing, the left wing. Look, the majority of the people what's important to the majority of the people is that there be food on the table, that our economy do well. And that's something that transcends party lines. There's no reason to get into political issues because of that.
Well, let's talk about political party history there in Hidalgo County and the Rio Grande Valley just in general. Back in 2018, Beto O'Rourke had trouble there. Of course, President Trump outperformed there in 2020. You were elected as well. What do you think is behind all the recent wins for Republicans?
I think it's a combination of things. I think the Trump factor played an important part in the last elections. And I think a lot of the individuals now, Hispanic individuals, are not afraid to say anymore, look, I'm conservative. Whether they're Republican or not, they are conservative. They have traditionally been very conservative, but always voted more as a Democrat. I think they're opening up their eyes and saying, look, it's a good thing. And I always say competition is a good thing.
So what would you say then to Governor Abbott or President Biden?
Well, I say to them, look, come towards the middle. Look, for example, Governor Abbott is a good friend of South Texas. I don't think we've had a governor that has visited that much. Now, do we agree 100% on his policies? The answer is no. The answer is no. Now, Biden just came in, and do we agree with 100% of the policies? The answer is definitely not. Now we're getting affected here in McAllen because of some changes by the federal level. So, but at the very end, we got to try and work things out, and that's something that sometimes I believe that they try not to. I mean, how do you raise money? By being adversarial, by pointing fingers at somebody else. Look, you're not like them. You're like this. Send me money, and that's not a right thing.
Mayor, congratulations. We appreciate the time this morning.
You bet.
So speaking of the GOP, the Republican Party of Texas is officially under new leadership. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West resigned to run for governor, as you know. The new chairman now is a known name among Texas conservatives. It's Matt Rinaldi, a former state representative from Dallas County. Rinaldi originally endorsed one of Greg Abbott's challengers, Don Huffines, and that raises the question of how Rinaldi might work with the governor now. Mr. Chairman, welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program, rather, and congratulations on the new position.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The Republican Party of Texas that you are now leading, it's pretty obvious that there are splinters inside this party. Where do you see bridges to be built?
You know, I've noticed in any organization that there's splinters, every business, every place I've worked, every political organization I've been a part of. But in the end, it all depends on treating people with respect hearing their views, and allowing everybody to have a voice.
Chairman, what's your vision for the party? What would you like to see it do over the next year before you have to run again?
Well, over the next year, we're going to build an infrastructure that we can use to both fundraising and boots on the ground in order to grow our majorities in the 2022 election. We're going to have a redistricting year. We're going to have a lot of opportunities to grow our congressional delegation, to grow our majorities in the House and Senate, and to continue winning statewide elections. And that's what I hope to do.
I want to talk about the GOP changes to election law. Democrats have now fled twice to kill that bill. Do you see any room for compromise with Democrats on this legislation?
No, I absolutely don't. If they wanted to compromise, they would have stayed in Austin and gone to work. And then we could have debated each issue point by point, and the legislature would have made a decision.
Wouldn't this bill have had a better chance, though, if both parties crafted it?
Would the bill have had a better chance? It seems that there's no daylight between the two. Democrats are against an election bill that provides 12 hours per day of early voting for a week when states like Delaware have zero. This is merely political.
The Speaker of the House says that he cannot strip leadership positions from Democrats who have fled out of D.C. You say that Speaker Phelan can. Is the Speaker making a mistake here?
With all respect, I do think the Speaker's incorrect on this. If you look at Rule 1, Section 15, the provision he's pointing to only applies when a new speaker is selected midterm. If a speaker appoints a committee chair, he can remove that committee chair.
You endorsed Don Huffines for governor, obviously, in your personal capacity. When you were elected chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, you withdrew that endorsement, obviously. But as chair now, do you plan on working closely with Governor Abbott?
I plan on working closely with all Republican officials. I don't think a chairman should take sides in a primary. Our job's to win general elections in 2022. But speaking to that point, I mean, when you are electing a Republican Party chairman, you want somebody who believes in the cause. You want somebody who's passionate, it's part of the movement. I would be extremely skeptical of anyone running for party chair who didn't take sides in a party primary before. But going forward, we are going to remain neutral in primaries, and I'm going to do the job I was elected to do.
Chairman Rinaldi, we appreciate the time. Congratulations again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A quick note there, Rinaldi says he thinks Speaker Phelan can remove Nicole Collier as chairwoman of the House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. Representative Collier is among the Democrats there in D.C. Our roundtable is standing by to put context into all the political headlines you've seen. We'll talk to the roundtable in just a moment. Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Ross Ramsey is back from Austin with the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram each week. And of course, Bernadine Steptoe, the political producer at WFAA in Dallas, joins us as well. Ross, let's start with you. Democrats just finished up their second week in D.C. They're starting their third week there. But the last week was pretty distracting with COVID. How much did that impact their PR and their messaging?
Well, it killed their messaging. They were trying to concentrate on getting Congress to pass a voting legislation that would preempt what they don't like in Texas. And instead, they spent the week talking about COVID, and attention was gradually ebbing away. They're going to have to get attention back to get anywhere with their program.
Bud, how did they get attention back?
Oh, they had such a great thing going. They had this lull in July when there's no other news coverage or anything. They were getting all this national coverage. It was kind of like the Texas Democrats became this year's Shark Week. They were everywhere. And then all of a sudden, all these COVID cases happened. The news story became that they went to Washington without their masks on. And the whole argument is tanked from there.
Bernadine?
They'll get it back. Well, actually, they had it. It was just a message that they didn't want. But I think that once we get past the COVID, not in terms of how effective it is, because it's going to be around, but they'll get it back, especially if they meet with President Joe Biden, which is what they're trying to do now.
Which is what they're trying to do, and who knows if the White House will allow them in since they have COVID. But Ross, let's pick up on COVID for a moment. The Delta variant obviously making a lot of news, putting a lot of young Texans in the hospital. Governor Abbott insisting, that he will not force a mask mandate or let any government entity in the state do that. So what are the options that county judges or county commissions or mayors or school districts have from here on out? Do they have any?
They do. They can do strong recommendations. They can you know, they have a little bit more ability to restrict businesses than the governor allows in his speeches, but he has hamstrung them to some extent. And the question is whether they can control what looks like the beginnings of what might be a surge.
It doesn't look that, Bud. What do you expect? What do you expect people to do then?
You know, what's worrisome is we see county judges who don't seem to care and aren't putting out any kind of message at all, and particularly in rural Texas, aren't telling their counties about the skyrocketing number of cases. They need to be encouraging businesses to institute their own limits, to require masks, to spread people apart more, and to put in their own restrictions.
Bernadine, do you think that we'll actually see any restrictions from counties or cities or school districts?
Well, I don't think so, because they can't put in too many restrictions. I think that what you're going to see is those county commissioners and those city council people and all those who, they're going to get a message out to get vaccinated and encourage the schools and the teachers, to encourage the parents to have masks on their children and to put masks on, because these governmental agencies, they can't do too much because of what Abbott has done.
And of course, Ross, Governor Abbott, saying this because he doesn't want to make the same mistakes he made last time, last year, especially as he goes into an election year here. Is this helping him at all? Can you tell among the conservative base?
I can't tell that it's hurting him. You know, I mean, everything you do here is a wrong move in some way. And I think the thing to watch is what the schools do. Some of them go back as soon as 3 weeks from now, and they're going to have to decide how much of their school is going to be virtual, how much of it's going to be actual, how to handle this. They're already dealing with a big slide in grades from having so much virtual classes last year. So tough decision.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Ross, Bud, Bernadine, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching as always. We'll see you again next week to take you inside Texas politics. Hope you have a good week.